The test kit sat on the kitchen counter for 11 days before Shaquille O'Neal opened it. It had been a gift. A gag gift, technically. The kind of thing you put in a basket at a charity auction alongside a signed jersey and a box of hot sauce. The kind of thing the person who wins it laughs about for 30 seconds and then forgets. His publicist had brought it to him as a joke. "Haha, big man, find out if you're secretly royalty." He had set it on the counter and left it there the way you leave things you're not sure what to do with. His housekeeper moved it twice, once to the windowsill, once back to the counter, and finally set it next to the coffee maker, where he would have to look at it every morning until he did something about it. On the 11th day, in the middle of March, in a kitchen in Los Angeles, Shaquille O'Neal swabbed the inside of his cheek for 30 seconds and dropped the tube in a FedEx envelope and thought nothing more about it. That was the last completely ordinary moment of what followed. But before you hear what came back, there are 3 things to notice first. 3 things that already existed in 3 different places on the morning he dropped that envelope in the mailbox. He did not know about any of them. None of them knew about each other. And yet all 3 had been pointing at each other, across time and distance, the way 3 compass needles point to the same north. The first was a letter, handwritten, 3 pages, folded into thirds, sitting in a manila envelope inside a fireproof lockbox inside a storage unit in Decatur, Georgia. It was addressed to no one by name. It began, "If anyone who carries my blood ever finds this, here is what I need you to know." It had been written in 2019. The woman who wrote it had died in 2021. Her name was Celestine Marie Okafor, and she was 83 years old when she picked up the pen, and her handwriting was still precise. The second was a name, just a name, typed into the Notes app of a phone belonging to a man named Emmanuel Okafor, 44, a high school history teacher in Stone Mountain, Georgia. The name was one he had found in an archive 6 months earlier, while researching a genealogy project for his school's Black History Month curriculum. He had typed it in because it appeared in a slave ship manifest dated 1807, listed under a column-headed cargo, and it was a name his grandmother Celestine had told him to look for. He had found it and typed it, and then set the phone down on his kitchen table and sat very still for a long time. He had not told anyone yet. He was still figuring out what to do with something that large. The third was a photograph, 5 inches by 7, black and white, mounted in a cardboard frame of the kind portrait studios used in the 1940s, showing a woman standing in front of a clapboard house, hands folded at her waist, looking directly at the camera with an expression that was not quite stern and not quite proud, but lived in the exact middle of both. On the back, in faded pencil, Mama. Talia, 1947. The photograph was in a shoebox in the back bedroom of a house in Stone Mountain, Georgia, next to a Bible with a broken spine and a collection of letters that had been carried, by hand or by postal route, across an ocean and back, for 40 years, between 2 families who were not supposed to still know each other, but did. None of these things were on Shaquille O'Neal's counter, but the envelope was in the mail. And what comes back, comes back. Now here is what you need to understand before the results arrive, not about the test, but about the man who took it, and what the word family had always meant in the specific geography of his life. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972, in Newark, New Jersey, the son of Lucille O'Neal and the stepson of Philip Harrison. Newark in March 1972 was cold and specific, and not gentle with the people who lived there. The hospital where he was born was 3 blocks from a block that had not been rebuilt since 1967. His mother was 19. She was small. He will tell anyone who asks. Made of something that has no name in any language he has ever encountered. Something between iron and love. Something that bends but does not break, and is warm to the touch. Lucille raised him on two things, discipline and story. The discipline came from Philip Harrison, who arrived when SHAQ was 6, who posted his one rule on the inside of every front door they ever had. Do not be a reaction. Be a response. And who meant it so completely that it stopped being a rule and became the weather. The story came from Lucille, in the evenings, at the kitchen table, when the homework was done. She told him about Louisiana, about Newark before Newark, about the great-grandmother who came up north with nothing in her hands except a recipe and a name she would not change for anyone. She told these stories the way people tell the stories they are afraid will die with them. With repetition, with emphasis, with the particular urgency of someone who knows that the version they carry is the only version left. There was one story she told more carefully than the others, more quietly. She told it only a few times, always late, always when the kitchen was otherwise empty. It was about her own grandmother, a woman she called Great Mama Inez, who had been born in Louisiana to a mother who had been born somewhere else entirely. Lucille didn't know exactly where. She knew the word her great-grandmother used for the food, the cadence she used for prayer, a name she said sometimes in sleep that no one in the family recognized. She knew there was a place, and she didn't know its name. And she said, every time she told the story, the same thing at the end, that part of us is somewhere. We just don't know where to look. Philip Harrison is gone now. He died in 2013. But his masking tape strip is still framed, still hanging at the entrance of every property SHAQ has ever owned. His rule got there before him in every new room. It always will. And Great Mama Inez is the ghost in this story. She was not in the FedEx envelope. She was not in the DNA database. But she was in everything that followed. The way a root is in every branch, you cannot see it. But nothing stands without it. Now you need to understand something about Emmanuel Okafor that the story requires you to hold. Emmanuel was born in 1980 in Stone Mountain, Georgia, the second son of Joseph and Celestine Okafor, who had come to Georgia from Lagos, Nigeria in 1974. Part of a wave of West African professionals who arrived in the American South during a specific window of immigration policy and economic opening, and built, quietly and without much acknowledgement, a second life in a country that was still figuring out what to do with them. Emmanuel grew up between two worlds and was fluent in both. He could speak Yoruba in his grandmother's kitchen and American history in a Georgia classroom. And the movement between the two had made him the kind of person who is comfortable with complexity, who looks for the longer story underneath the short one. His grandmother Celestine was the one who had made him a researcher. She had sat him down at age 10 and told him that their family had a specific obligation, not a vague cultural obligation, but a precise one. She told him about a name. She told him about a ship. She told him about a woman who had been taken in 1807 from a village near the coast of what was now Sierra Leone, a village called Talia, and about the thread of correspondence that had survived, somehow, across the ocean, across generations, across the dissolution of everything that should have made it impossible, between the family left behind and the family that eventually reformed in Louisiana. She told him that the correspondence had stopped in 1962. She told him the name of the woman it stopped with. She told him to find what came after. Emmanuel had spent 3 years looking. He had found the ship manifest in a digitized archive at Emory University at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in September, alone in his living room with cold coffee. He had found the name listed as cargo. He had set his phone down on the table and sat very still for a very long time, the way you sit when history stops being abstract. He had typed the name into his notes app because he didn't trust himself to remember it correctly. He had not told anyone. His grandmother had been dead for 2 years. The letter in the lockbox in the storage unit in Decatur was in the 3rd page of its instructions. Find the connection. Don't be afraid of how large it is. Large things are large because they matter. The DINA results came back on a Tuesday. SHAQ was in a hotel room in Houston, eating room service, watching highlights. His phone was on the nightstand. The notification arrived at 9:23 p.m., a small rectangle on his screen with the logo of the testing company and the words, "Your ancestry results are ready." He looked at it for a moment. He was expecting percentages, some West African, some this, some that. A chart, something to laugh about with his publicist. He opened it. The first screen showed the regional breakdown. Nothing surprising, nothing he didn't already understand in his bones. He scrolled. The second screen showed DINA matches. 1st, 2nd, 3rd cousins, arranged by estimated closeness. He scrolled through these the way you scroll through things that don't yet feel real, quickly, without fully reading, waiting to feel something that tells you to stop. He stopped. The match was listed as a 1st to 2nd cousin range, estimated shared DINA placing the relationship at the closer end. The profile name was E. Okafor. Stone Mountain, Georgia. The match had a short note on the profile, added by the user 6 weeks prior, which read, "Researching West African origins, specifically Sierra Leone, pre-1807. If you share this heritage and have family stories from Louisiana going back to the 19th century, I would like to speak with you." SHAQ read the note twice. He set the phone face down on the nightstand. He picked it up again. He read it a 3rd time. He thought about his mother's kitchen. He thought about the story told late, with the lights low, about Great Mama Inez. He thought about the word his mother had used for the place she couldn't name, somewhere. He opened the message function and typed 3 words. He looked at them for a long time. Then, he hit send. The 3 words were, "Tell me everything." Emmanuel Okafor was in his classroom at 6:47 a.m. the next morning, preparing for first period, when the notification arrived. He saw the profile name. He looked at the ceiling for several seconds. He was a high school history teacher, and he had spent his entire career trying to make the past feel real to people who could not feel its weight. And now the past had sent him a message at 6:47 in the morning and asked to know everything. He called in a substitute. He drove to the storage unit in Decatur. He retrieved the lockbox. He took it to the parking lot and sat in his car and opened it and took out the 3-page letter and read it. Not for the first time, but for the first time with a reason. Then he took photographs of every page and sent them, along with every document in the box, along with the slave ship manifest, along with the 40 years of correspondence that had traveled between Sierra Leone and Louisiana and gone silent in 1962, to the profile name on the DINA platform. He typed 1 line beneath the attachments. Your great-great-great-grandmother's name was Adize. She was from Talia. This is what we have been keeping for her. The room SHAQ was in when he received that message was very quiet. It was the same hotel room in Houston. He was no longer eating. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with the phone in both hands, reading. He read for a long time. The highlights were still playing on the television behind him, soundless because he had turned off the volume without noticing he was doing it. He sat with the phone in both hands and he read. He called his mother at 11:14 p.m., which was 1:14 in her time. She answered on the second ring, the way she always does, because she has never in her life not answered for her son on the second ring, regardless of the hour. He said, "Mama, you know the story about Great Mama Inez. The part about where she came from." His mother said yes. He said, "I found it." There was a silence. It was not a short silence. It was the kind of silence that holds something that has been waiting too long to fit into words. Then Lucille O'Neill said, with absolute steadiness, in the voice that never breaks, "I knew we just didn't know where to look." He did not say anything. She did not say anything. They stayed on the line for another 4 minutes, saying nothing, which was the exactly right amount. Emmanuel Okafor flew to Los Angeles 7 weeks later. He brought his daughter, Nadia, 12 years old, who had her great-grandmother Celestine's eyes and the same patience for research, who had been told the whole story and had said only, "So, it worked." The letters worked. She meant that the 40-year correspondence had worked, that the thread had held, that the people who kept writing across the ocean when there was no reason to believe anyone was still reading had been right to keep writing. They met at a house in Los Angeles on a Sunday afternoon. Emmanuel brought the letter. He brought the correspondence. He brought the photograph, 5 inches by 7, black and white. A woman standing in front of a clapboard house, hands folded, looking directly at the camera. The pencil note on the back, reading Mama. Talia, 1947. He laid these things out on a table the way you lay out evidence, except the verdict had already arrived before any of them were born. SHAQ held the photograph for a long time. He held it the way his great-grandmother Oletha had held photographs, not looking at them exactly, but reading them. He did not say anything about it for a while. Then he said, "She has my mother's eyes." Emmanuel looked at the photograph and looked at SHAQ and said nothing, because sometimes the thing that needs to be said has already been said by the evidence on the table. Nadia Okafor, 12 years old, had brought a notebook. She had written in her careful hand at the top of the first page, "Things I know. Things I found out. Things I still need to find." She added a line under "Things I found out" and showed it to no one. The line read, "The letters always worked. They just needed time." There is a word in Yoruba, that refers to the personal spirit, the part of you that was chosen before birth, that guides the path. Celestine Okafor had used it often. She had told Emmanuel that their families had one direction, and they would know it when they found it. Emmanuel had not known what she meant for most of his life. He thought he might know now. A woman named Adaisi was taken from Talia in 1807. She became someone in Louisiana whose name was changed but whose cadence in prayer was not, whose word for food was not, whose name she said in sleep no one could place. Her thread ran through Inez, who ran through a great-grandmother Lucille could not name but could describe, who ran through a woman who told the story in a kitchen in Newark in the evenings when the homework was done, who ran through a man who swabbed the inside of his cheek for 30 seconds as a joke and did not expect anything and found everything. Do not be a reaction. Be a response. Philip Harrison said this until it became weather. But the response to Adaisi had taken 217 years to complete its sentence. It completed it on a Sunday afternoon in Los Angeles, on a table with a photograph and a lockbox and a notebook with 3 columns, in a room where no one was in a hurry for anything. Some things take the time they take. That is not a failure of urgency. That is the nature of things that are real. Emmanuel Okafor and his daughter flew home to Stone Mountain on Monday evening. He returned to his classroom on Tuesday and taught first period and said nothing about the weekend to his students. But in the margin of his lesson plan, in the corner where he sometimes writes notes to himself, he wrote one word: found. Nadia Okafor's notebook now has 2 full pages under things I found out. She is 12. She has time. And Lucille O'Neill, who never stopped believing that that part of us is somewhere, who told the story quietly and late and with the precision of someone who knows that the version they carry is the only version left. Lucille received, 6 weeks later, a framed copy of the photograph, 5 inches by 7. Black and white. A woman standing in front of a clapboard house, hands folded, looking directly at the camera. The pencil note reproduced on a small card attached to the back of the frame. Mama. Talia, 1947. She hung it in the kitchen, next to the coffee maker, where you have to look at it every morning. Drop a comment and tell us, where are you watching from? And has your family ever carried a story they couldn't finish? We read every word. If this reached something in you, let the like button carry it, not because of what it does for the numbers, but because Adaize deserves to know how far her thread traveled. Subscribe to this community if you haven't. The people in this channel are the reason we can find these stories, and every person who joins makes the next one possible. The next story is already waiting for you. We will see you there.